the Navy is evil, the Army is just stupid.
This week, I would love to introduce a wonderful person by the name of Eric Spears. Eric,
Hey, how's it
welcome to
going?
the show.
Thank you, thank you.
So Eric is an old friend of mine out of Sasebo, Japan. We served together in the Navy, and he's one of the kindest people I've ever met. And unfortunately, the military kind of let him down.
Hmm.
Eric, as Tim said, welcome to the show. Do you want to provide your own introduction?
Yeah, no. I started off my career right out of high school in the Navy. Wasn't super fulfilled with that. It wasn't quite what I wanted out of the military. I decided to switch to the Army at the end of my contract, and switched to the Army. Ended up being stationed in Washington, Washington State, that is, and did that for another 6 years. And I just recently got out earlier this year. Now I'm doing corrections, still trying to branch out into other law enforcement agencies. But yeah, that's the long and short of it.
I think you're missing a couple key important things.
Yeah, I'm just trying to regather my thoughts again. So I started off in Sasebo, Japan, with our boy Aaron here. Is a good time, and a lot of the things that I think pushed me to the Army were mostly the leadership. I distinctly remember, like, I was only less than 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years into my time with the Navy. And I think I can't remember the exact details. I remember the night. I think I got in trouble for something stupid with our MA1 at the time. And I immediately looked into the Blue to Green program online. But apparently the Blue to Green program, it transfers you to a similar MOS in the Army. And I didn't want to I don't want to be an MP. So I figured I'd just wait and finish my contract and get what I wanted. And I'm an infantryman, or I was an infantryman. I'm also in the National Guard now. I'm no longer active duty.
Nice. So,
Yeah.
Eric, you're also a huge gun enthusiast. You practice Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
You're also a happily married man. You know, you're a lot more than just your military experience, though we may hyperfixate a little bit on that military experience during this episode, just based off of the nature of Aaron, you, and I. So
Yes, for sure. Sometimes felt like I was the only guy in the Army that loved my wife.
dude,
That is a
So-
strange thing in the military, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, dude, I love my wife. Like, oh, my wife's a bitch. Blah, blah, blah.
dude, it's crazy, but people tell me every time they see like me and my wife together, like out in public, we're always coking and joking and laughing and having a good time. People are like, they're like, you two legitimately seem like a great couple. They're like, I've never seen that in the military. All military people are miserable in their marriage. And I'm like, that's so sad. Like, that is so
Yeah.
fucking sad.
It really is.
Like,
Yeah. I do want to touch on one thing really quick about how people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses.
Mm.
But first, if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, which according to our analytics is a little unlikely, we're also on YouTube. Please go like, subscribe, follow us there. Tim got some new editing software. He is killing it lately, putting out these shorts to where you can really get the condensed version of what we're expressing in these episodes. Oh, we're also on Discord. Go over to our Discord, ask us questions so that we can provide the interviews that you want to see.
the link is going to be down below. If you would like to go and join and just talk with Aaron and I directly, you can talk about anything you want. Tell us how your day was. Ask us how our day was. If you want to get on there and ask what the difference between blue and green actually is, maybe, just maybe, I can give you an answer.
So I was going to be a lifer as well, Eric, until I got medically retired, which we've been into a little bit. And if people are interested in that, I can talk more about that. But I distinctly remember going to Captain's Mast in Japan because somebody else did some dumb stuff. And I wasn't like hyper fixated on making sure that I covered my own behind. I just kind of trusted my team, and if something goes wrong, the people who
God.
did wrong will be held accountable.
Such a
Which-
common story.
Not how that works at all. So, was your experience in the Army similar, or what kind of mindset shifts did you go through as you switched branches there?
So I've heard a lot of other friends and colleagues, both that I've met through the internet and then dudes that came to my unit from other units across the Army. They've been screwed over before by the Army, but in my experience, I was very pleasantly surprised by how much like trust was given to me as a E4 becoming then an E5. For last time we kind of discussed this. Something I felt like I had to do in the Navy was fake it all the time, fake it till I make it. And I just felt like I was under a microscope all the time, and I wasn't trusted to do my job right. My least favorite MA1 always seemed to be upset with me the way I did things as a patrolman, but I was doing things my previous MA1s did, or I was doing things the way the previous MA1s liked. And this MA1, as much as I disliked him, to his credit, he was very by the books. But instead of helping me and training me to meet his standard, he just kind of shit on me and put me down and never tried to build me back up. And just made me feel small and worthless. And yeah, that was definitely the most miserable 6 months of my life, I'd say. And
I'm sorry you had that.
Yeah. So yeah, I distinctly remember like one night I was in Yokoze actually. I was just sobbing, calling my wife, telling her how upset I was. And then after the conversation, I reached out to a couple buddies from high school, one buddy from high school and another buddy from reenacting. And I was asking them like, hey guys, what's the Army like?
Yeah.
And they had mostly good things to say. One buddy from high school, he was out at Fort Bliss, which I have not heard good things about. He's like, yeah, it's where your hua goes to die. But overall, he still recommended the Army. And so, yeah, after a couple more years, my contract was ended. I got in touch with a recruiter at my second duty station, which was in DC. Also a miserable experience because being in Japan, we get overseas housing allowance. And that being my first duty station, I had no idea how BAH worked. So I get over to DC. I'm like, okay, cool. BAH is a little over $2,000 a month. Here's a little apartment, $1,800 a month. Too easy. And then my paychecks adjusted to domestic pay instead of Oconus pay. And I was like, what the f***? Why is my BAH split between my two paychecks?
Yeah.
No one told me this.
Going from Japan to Nevada, it was like I was missing an entire paycheck every month.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the cost of living in DC was ridiculous. And yeah, that was a miserable 1 year and kind of helped solidify. I was like, okay, I'm making a good choice. I need to get the out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and
yeah.
I think that's wild that you said the people in the Army who weren't even enjoying the Army still recommended it. Whereas the people in the Navy who are enjoying it still don't recommend it. So,
yeah.
I mean, it's like I'm having a 10 out of 10 at a 1 out of 10 experience versus I'm having a 1 out of 10 experience on a 10 out of 10 like lifestyle.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess, again, tying it back to what's the difference between blue and green, something I've been saying a lot lately is the Navy is evil. The Army is just stupid. And yeah, like people like I get a lot of questions at my prison when I meet people first time. I'm like, oh yeah, I was 10 years in the military between Navy and Army. And everyone's like, oh man, why would you switch to the Army from the Navy? And I would tell them what I just said. They're like, oh, that's interesting. And yeah, I would say like the only thing the Navy has beat on the Army is duty stations.
Yeah, we do have some pretty cool stations, I can attest.
Sasebo, I know you were in Greece. Tim's in Italy right now.
Yeah.
Although there's an airborne brigade in Italy that I would have loved to have gone to, but
yeah, we got a lot of. I mean, multiple branches out here. Army, Air Force, Marines. We got them all, actually. I think I just named them all, except what's that new Space Force? Yeah. We don't have that.
Mm.
But that doesn't matter. What really matters.
There's probably like
here,
5 Space Force dudes somewhere hidden.
What really matters is like, what's the actual likelihood of you going overseas? Like, I've heard a lot of those overseas billets kind of get reserved for the bigger ranking guys in the Army. They kind of, they're like, yeah, you can go to Germany, but you're probably not going to unless you're a Sarge or higher.
No, it's not like that. It's just statistically smaller. Germany has a bunch of bases and a lot of infantry brigades, which are huge, but just compared to the rest of all the Army bases in the U.S., it's just statistically smaller. Like at my base here at Fort Lewis in Washington, after being there for almost 6 years, I only got like a couple dudes that came from Germany to us, which was really surprising. But yeah, like it's not terribly difficult to get Germany. It's just, it's smaller. So,
yeah.
And then, there's Germany and Korea. And that's like the big ones where you can go as infantry. And then there's other smaller bases around the world. There's even a small little Army base near Yokosuka in Japan. But it's more of a intel and communications base. I think the only combat arms guy there is like a single Green Beret.
Jesus. Before we move on to the numbers game, like, how many people are in the Army versus the Navy and how that kind of shakes out, I do kind of want to get a little bit better of an explanation about how do you define the Navy as evil and the Army as stupid? What do you mean specifically by that?
Yeah. I guess the best way to put it is like leadership in the Navy seemed actively malicious and out to get me. Whereas Army leadership, there's some guys that definitely are out to get. They're only out for themselves, trying to just gain rank. But overall, because the Army's bigger and sometimes just the mission, it's just, there's so many moving parts. Things get lost in the cracks. There'll be bad communication. So I felt like anytime I was miserable in the Army, it's just because, obviously we're going to be outside working a hard job, setting up ranges and stuff. It's going to be stupid. Some people are going to get frustrated and burnt out and angry and just lack of communication sometimes. So yeah, that's mostly why. It's things would be really dumb. We'd be moving a bunch of sandbags and then someone come down oh shit, no guys, those sandbags are supposed to stay there. Oh, well shit, now we got to move them back. I think
classics.
I think there's this video, old little viral video. It's kind of old now. It's one guy's I'm moving sandbags from over here to over there. Why? I don't know. And he's an E6.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Yeah. I'm curious though as well. So primary reason why you wanted to switch was because of the poor leadership you've had to experience in the Navy. Mm-hmm. But so how long ago was that, by the way?
Oh gosh, this was 7 to 8 years ago now.
Okay.
That ballpark.
Okay. So 7 to 8 years ago, it was when you were
when I decided, yeah.
Yeah. And then you actually transitioned to the Army shortly after that, I assume, right?
It was about, I can't remember. It was 1.5 years or 2 years.
Okay. So we're still looking at over a 6-year difference.
Yeah.
When you were,
because I was in the Navy for 4.5 years. I had to extend 6 months in order to move back to the States. Okay. And I wanted to be in the States because I just knew it'd be easier with my plan to transition, it'd just be easier to do that stateside. Okay. I didn't want to have to be emailing recruiters with weird time zone differences and stuff, as much as I would have loved to stay in Japan another year.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So during your time in the Army, did you actually feel like the leadership style was significantly better, or?
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
What were the differences?
So I don't know, dude, my senior leaders, my E7s were the biggest key difference. Like I said, so when I first got to my unit in the Army, I was kind of pissed off about it. I'll get to that later. But so I get to my battalion and I get snatched up by the operations shop because they were short on bodies. and the E7 in charge of the operations shop, which has like a lot of officers. It's like all the planning dudes and stuff. We work closely with the big command team. He was really bad at his job. He reminded me a lot of a Navy leader. And I distinctly remember one day we're out in the motor pool, which is where we keep all our tactical vehicles. We're messing with them, and like he comes out, starts getting really heated with us. He's like, "How come you guys didn't dispatch the vehicles?" Dispatching, it's like a weird bureaucratic thing. We gotta like do a maintenance check on the vehicle, submit the paperwork with properly licensed people. It's a pain in the ass, but like just to get it ready for field use, to drive it anywhere outside the motor pool. But anyways, he's like, "How come you guys didn't do this?" We're like, "We didn't know, Sergeant. We didn't know at all that we had to do this at all." And he's like, and he's trying to like put it on us. He's trying so hard, and we're like, "We didn't know." He's like, "You guys know we're going to the field next week." I'm like, "No, we don't."
Who told us
And
this?
so that was like, because I was out there with one of my buddies. He was a former Marine, and we were both just pissed the way this guy came out and talked to us, trying to blame us for his up. We think he was in the office this morning, and like all the other operations, this is like a bunch of lieutenants and captains and a sergeant major were like, "Hey, how come the trucks aren't dispatched?" And so he probably forgot to tell us, and then had to come out and bitch at us for us. But that was one of the only times where like the whole shit rolls downhill thing that really happened. Like, because any other time, any of my E7s, I liked almost all of my platoon sergeants, which is an E7 slot. And I liked the other battalions E7s I would interact with occasionally. They all seemed like really solid dudes, and they knew what they're doing. They cared about their guys. That's another thing. Like Army leadership, they seem to genuinely care and like about the people under them. And so I think I was very lucky with that. And yeah, I just think they care. I know I brought up a bad example, but I just wanted to highlight that because everyone was so much better than him, whereas he was the exception, not the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the Navy, I feel like, man, like out of my 6 watch commanders, I only liked half of them. Out of my chiefs, I only liked one of them. Any of the other chiefs I did like weren't my section chief. They were just scattered around other positions. But yeah, like all of my leadership in the Army, I pretty much liked almost all of them. And like my most recent platoon sergeant that I had the longest, I liked him the least too. He was kind of a dick to me, and me and him didn't really get along. But it was kind of like he would, it's weird, like he faked caring about us, but not in a superficial way. It's like, okay, my job is to have them do this. So he would like take care of us because he knew that's his job, even though he didn't like us very much sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like I have such a weird love-hate with this guy because
Weird. That's. I mean, I don't know. I think I would ultimately say that's a good thing because he put his differences aside and was like, "I'm taking care of these people regardless if I like them or not."
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, like I remember I had an issue. I had to take my wife to the hospital one time, and I had to stay with her all day in the emergency room, and then the next day. And I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, the doctors recommend I stay one more day." I messaged my squad leader. I was like, "Hey, can I stay home one more day to be with her, make sure she's good to go?" And then squad leader was instantly like, "Yeah, man, let me check with PSG. Those tracking." And then he messaged you like less than 5 minutes later. He's like, "Okay, you're good to go. Come back in on Wednesday." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And then like I came back in Wednesday. This platoon sergeant again that me and him don't get along. He ushers me out to his car. He's like, "Hey man, like, what's going on at home?" He's like, "Oh, this is what happened." He's like, "Okay, cool deal." So
it sounds like there's actual camaraderie in the Army versus the Navy, where you kind of have to watch out because the most clear route of ascent is climbing over the backs of your peers. And
yeah, for sure.
one thing we talked about in the brainstorm was how the Navy is focusing on the test. Like you always have to be ready for the inspection. Whereas the Army, they focus on just doing the job.
Yes,
so
that was my big impression when I was in Army Basic was, like in Navy boot camp, because all of our rates are so technical and diverse. The only commonality is attention to detail.
Mm-hmm.
So they hammer into us like the uniform inspections, the rack inspections, the DNC inspections, the marching and stuff we did. We just do that ad loop infinitum. And it got to a point where like, yeah, we're good at it and I get it, but it started to feel like a waste of time. Like I still feel like Navy boot camp, it could probably be reduced to 6 to 4 weeks, honestly. Like get that discipline in them, drive them hard and fast, and then send them off to A school, I think would be much better.
They do have push divisions in the Navy where they have lowered it to 6 weeks. But it's kind of a hectic schedule that they got for them because, they have all those wickets they still have to meet. So yeah. I've had a couple of my friends who've been through push division literally went from battle stations to graduation the very next day. And
yeah, that happened to me actually but that was because of a budget issue. I think there was a government shutdown in the time we were supposed to have battle stations, and like we did battle stations and we left like 6 hours early to go home back, get changed, and change into our uniforms to graduate.
Damn.
They were like, they had dudes going up and down our line to make sure we didn't pass out.
Yeah, the body snatchers, they called them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember we're marching to the graduation building as the other divisions that did battle stations with us were coming out. Well, hey guys.
Hey, did you guys pass?
Yeah.
Just like drool from your mouth, just like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to me, whenever I'm hearing, the experiences that you had of leadership in the Navy and Army, the first question I want to ask is, during your move between the two, did you realize that there was a certain kind of leadership style that worked more specifically for you?
No. Yeah. Once I kind of noticed it with the way the drill sergeants were. And then I really started to click when I got to my first unit. Like last time in our brainstorm session, I was talking about how the Navy was like super crazy anal retentive about those fake weird little M9s they gave us to do Firewatch with.
Yeah.
On one hand, I get it, treat it seriously. But I remember day one, there was like me and like about 6 to 8 prior service guys in my basic company. And there's about 2 to 3 of us per platoon. And so the drill sergeants would pull out all the M4s, like legit, honest to God, select fire M4s. And they just kind of tossed them all to us like, okay, prior guys, show them how to use it. We're going to have a more in-depth class tomorrow. Bye. I was like, me and the other, I had one former Navy guy in my platoon also. And we were like, what? Just holding our M4s. And he was a gun guy too. So we were like, okay, guys, we gave him a quick down and dirty lesson on how to use an M4 real quick. And of course, the drill sergeants gave much more in-depth classes later throughout the week. But, that's that first night. They're like, okay, here's a full auto M4.
Speaking of full auto M4, have you seen that meme that's floating around where it's like, do you know what the button on the side of an M4 does? And it shows the forward assist. And it's like, if you hit that, it turns the gun into a full automatic. Disgusting that they sell those on the market or something like that.
Yeah.
That shit cracks me up every time. But so to me, it sounds like you really appreciated when people treated you like an adult.
Yes.
A lot of the Navy's policies, and I understand that the policies are written in blood, which is, for the listeners, that's a term that we typically use. I'm sure other people outside of the military, I've only ever heard it in the military, but a lot of the times when we say a policy is written in blood, it's usually because somebody was severely injured or died or whatever because of a mistake, and now that there's a new rule put into place to prevent that from ever happening again. I understand why we are so anal retentive about our weapons handling procedures because of how many freaking people have been injured during negligent discharges. But sometimes, man, when you're in the military as an MA for 10 years and they hand you a gun and you have to treat it like it is the most delicate thing in the damn world, and all I want to do is just upload so I can go do my watch, like, it can be a little frustrating. Like, I know how to handle a gun. I've done this so many damn times that I think it's almost impossible for me to mistreat this weapon. But I still have to follow the rules every single time. But
Yeah.
That's neither here
And
nor there.
like,
That's kind of a mute point anyway to me, really. But I do appreciate when it feels like your intelligence isn't being insulted and you're getting treated like an adult. Those are two
yeah,
massive things to me.
yeah, for sure. Like, and that carried over at least to my first unit. Like, is you check the weapon yourself when they hand it to you out of the arms room, and just don't point at anyone. And even these dumbass privates, they know that. Like, don't be a jackass, and you won't be freaked out on or whatever. It may be different with like pogue units because they only bring their weapons out to like qual once or twice a year. So maybe that's different for them, but at least in the combat arms side, it was like, yeah, dude, here's your weapon. Make sure it's clear and safe when I hand it to you, and then just be safe.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that carried over in pretty much everything else. Like, so me being at a striker unit, striker is a big armored personnel carrier. 8 wheels, 50% more truck per truck. So like, yeah, like
the truck is truck.
yes, we're out in the motor pool, and like crews. I had to be a crew a bunch because kind of going back to the S3 shop, the operation shop snatching me up is I learned more truck stuff, more striker stuff, and I got pretty good at it, but it's not what I wanted out of the Army. I wanted to handle, weapons and stuff like that. And then by the time, so I was in the operation shop for about like a year and a half. And then they pushed me to a line company. And like, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm a big dude. Platoon sergeant's going to look at me and be like, oh yeah, you're going to be a 240 gunner, a saw gunner. And unfortunately, this was like the week before a huge training event. And everyone had already certified on their roles. And like, oh, we need a driver, man. So I got to be a striker driver, and then eventually a vehicle commander for too long. But yeah, like we're out in the motor pool, like it's like, hey, go PMCS, preventive maintenance checks and services. Go PMCS the trucks, come back when you're done, and like senior leadership would always harp. It's like, I want to see an E6 in the motor pool, and like there's not really much for them to do. Like, I get it, like be with your guys, but they're just kind of standing there. Like, we know what we're doing. We know how to take care of the trucks. We know how to ask the mechanics for help if we need it. So like they would do it like once and then go back and be in the company, try to train the other Joes. So like, yeah, that carried over, I think, pretty much everywhere. And like, I would have like a very well experienced, like on the mechanic side, like an E4 mechanic, and he's like running shit. He's out there running the line, making sure we're squared away. His E5 or E6 isn't bugging him much. Just stuff like that. Sometimes like the supply shop office for our each company would be ran by like an E4 or below, and they're filling. It's supposed to be a NCO. I was good friends with a chick. She was in our neighboring artillery battalion. She's a little E4, been in like 2 years, and she's running her whole battery supply office. And like, granted, that was due to a manning shortage. Weren't enough leadership around, but still, like, I don't see, even if there was a manning shortage, I don't see the Navy doing that.
No.
They would like shuffle around an E5 at minimum to try and fill that position, even if it wasn't their rate.
It's the shuffling around part. 100% agree.
Yeah.
You're responsible for this. Training? No training. Only accountability.
Yeah, for sure.
So one thing that we talked about a little bit in the brainstorm sesh is the training as you pick up rank in the Army. Could you tell us a little more about that? Because in the Navy, we also have training, but it's a week sitting in a classroom where they define words for you.
Yeah, for sure. So locally, my battalion, I went through 2 team leader courses, which were put on by the battalion, and those were super awesome. They were about 2 weeks, and it was a mix of administrative and tactical things. So we would go over counselings, resources, things like that. And of course, tactical side, we go over battle drills, how to teach the Joes certain shooting or movement techniques. And then that was just ran by the battalion. Like, they didn't have to do that. Or even our sergeant major was telling us, like how important the team leader is to the Army. Like it'll never happen, but the really high up senior Army leadership, they're trying to brainstorm a way to make sure team leaders get paid more, which like I don't see how they could possibly fairly implement that. But like that's how seriously they take it. Is like if you're in a team leader position, whether you're an E4 or an E5, they want to pay you more. But like again, that'll never happen. But like that's how seriously they take it. And then to actually pick up rank, you have to go E4s or E5s that maybe picked up and didn't do it. They had to go what's called basic leadership course. And basic leadership course, all MOSs go to. It's localized to your base. And then to pick up E5 to E6, you'll go to a similar course called ALC, but that is specific to your MOS. I was about to go to that, but I didn't pass height and weight because I was depressed. And so a couple of my buddies did, and they get a lot of awesome training. They get marksmanship training, go over battle drills, because E6s are like they're like the dudes that they're like in charge, and they're supposed to be subject matter experts in their MOS. So like, yeah, you'll gain a lot of experience just doing your job, but the Army makes sure at your ALC, your school to become an E6, they score you away in your MOS. And then, of course, again, the BLC I went to become an E5, a sergeant, generalized knowledge. Like at one point, we have to do this is the part I hated. I think it was a stupid thing, but the warm up and cool down shit for PT, we had to do that. And then we had to teach a small class on a simple Army task. I think mine was orienting a map to the terrain. And then my other guys in my class had to do something similar. Small level task, but you're teaching it. It's something your average Joe wouldn't know.
Is the purpose of the teaching in order for you to receive feedback and learn how to be a better teacher?
Okay. Yes, how to us see how good we are at teaching, pretty much. And then this carries on up. Like there's a class to become a school to become an E7, an E8, and there's a sergeant major academy. And then I believe there's similar stuff for the officers. I kept hearing once our lieutenants had done all their billet time and they would leave us, they would get automatically pinned to captain, but then they would be shuffled off to captain's career course. So this carries over both enlisted and officer side. And that I really appreciated, because I remember when I picked up MA3, there was this stupid little 1 week course.
Petty officer in doc?
Yeah, petty officer in doc. And yeah. That also pisses me off about the Navy, because one time I was in my petty officer in doc, and I was really critical about PQSs, because I was like, hey, how come I'm just getting told to Google shit, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, they pulled me aside after, like, what are you doing bitching about PQS in front of the whole class like that? That's unprofessional, blah, blah. Instead of being like, hey, why are you being told to Google stuff? Like, let's figure this out. Because I distinctly remember I was told one night I was going to do UI. I was like, okay, cool. So I go up to one of the more experienced MA2s. I'm like, all right, cool. You guys gonna take me out and do like high traffic stops and forms? And they're like, oh no, go on the little computer room over there and look up stuff on your PQS. I was like, okay. And then my buddies are coming in and off a post, we're down a guy because I'm doing UI. And I'm just losing my mind because my buddies are tired because they have to stay on post longer. And then at the end of shift, I found out they took someone else out and did everything like actual procedures, like high risk traffic stop, like how to do the interview forms and all that. And I'm like, what the fuck? How come I'm getting treated differently?
Wow, that is incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, that pissed me the fuck off. So, and then, of course, I get promoted about a couple weeks later, and I brought that up. I'm like, hey, how come this is happening? And I get bitched at for it.
Yeah, it seems like the problem there is you're making us look bad. Not like, hey, you have real concerns we're going to address. And then once you switch to the Army, it sounds like the basic leadership and then the advanced leadership. The basic leadership, they're like, hey, here's the shit that you're responsible for and here's how to do it. And then I'm not sure about the advanced leadership course, I'm sure Tim will talk about the Navy's version here soon.
Yeah, I got notes.
So does that seem accurate that the basic leadership, once you become an NCO, they're like, hey, here's how to be NCO.
Yeah.
Whereas the Navy's just kind of like, hey, you're an NCO now. Figure it out. And if you fuck it up, we will slam your PP in a big book.
Yes.
I'm really curious. Did you feel like the course actually prepared you to be a leader? Like, do you think it actually gave you the tools you needed in order to help your team and get your soldiers up to where they needed to be?
I would have preferred more like, job specific stuff, but I knew later on in my career, if I pursued that, I would get that. But yeah, I found it very helpful. And then of course my battalion did the MOS specific team leader course twice. I got to do that twice, which was really cool.
Nice.
And so yeah, I felt much more prepared and comfy. My first couple training events as a sergeant after those were still kind of rough because I've been stuck on the trucks for so long. But I appreciated that at least like the first live fire I did, I had to fill in for one of the corporals. He was going to BLC. And I didn't like, I knew the shift fire. So like it was a squad live fire and I was in charge of my fire team and we were the support by fire. So we're laying hate on the objective. And then the other team was going to maneuver around and push through, and we had to shift fire, make sure we weren't shooting at the objective anymore when they were on the objective. And I didn't like know the proper procedure to acknowledge that they called for it. Like I knew like, oh, we got to shift off. So like, I just like, hey, shift fire. I was like, Roger, hey guys, and I just started leading my team. But in hindsight, I didn't realize how like kind of bad that was, but still like afterwards, they're like, hey Spears, this is how you respond with that. Like my platoon sergeant and the other squad leader were like, hey, okay, you've been on the truck a while. Our bad. We should have gone over this with you. And so, yeah.
That sounds a lot of like accountability and, an appropriate way to correct an issue.
Exactly.
Versus like telling you to Google it and stop talking about why you're Googling PQS line items.
Hey, exactly. You did it wrong. How do I do it? Do it right.
Yeah.
What's right? Figure it out.
Figure it out. I hate that phrase so much.
There are times when that's appropriate.
Yeah, 100%. I will say that that's probably not the way I would phrase it nowadays. I would probably, probably just directly ask them, like, what do you need my assistance with in this matter? I know you can, I don't know. I'm kind of just talking off the cuff right here. It's not like I have a direct answer for that, but I probably would say it a little bit different than like, go figure it out. But yeah. Not saying that that's wrong.
You can pursue that knowledge on your own.
Yeah. This is not the answer you're looking for. Post out like some Jedi mind trick shit. Out of curiosity, Joe, like, is that just a terminology you guys refer to each other in the Army or like junior ranking?
Oh, yeah. Joe, it's like for junior enlisted, like G.I. Joe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's like like Joe's like privates and specialists.
Oh, okay. Kind of like Navy shipmate, but
yeah, kind of.
Kind of, maybe.
But yeah, Joe, it's like a term of endearment for junior enlisted.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So the good news is, in the past 6-ish years since you've transferred away from the Navy, and Aaron, I think it's been about 3 or 4 for you now at this point.
I retired in 22, but I was really out probably a year and a half before that.
So the Navy has really been making massive pushes because they've recognized that their leadership is the primary reason why people are getting out of the Navy. Like if you are if you are a junior sailor, you have 4 years and you show up to your first command and your first leader treats you like your gum on the bottom of his damn sneakers, like you're going to get out. Like you're not going to stay in. There's no love in the Navy. There's no love for the people that you work with. Like you'll trauma bond with some people, but the connections you have with those people aren't going to be enough for you to want to stay in. And the Navy's like, hey, our retention is absolutely dog shit right now. Where's the problem? And then they took a look at the DOX surveys that they do every year and started realizing that there's a trend. Leadership, pay, fair enough. Leadership. And everybody was like, we should really do something about this pay problem. Let's give more people money. And then the leadership thing showed up a year later. But So petty officer indoc though, that's not really much of a thing anymore. Like they've swapped them out for courses that are, believe it or not, called Basic Leadership Development Course, the BLDC, and then we also have an ALDC, and I think there's another one too. From my understanding, there's 3 in total, but I only know of the 2 off the top of my head, which is good, right? So what these courses are is they're approximately a 4-day long course where they bring people in and then they teach them about leadership. Now, there's some pitfalls in this course that I would like to address, but I'm going to say some nice things about it first. Biggest thing is, I just went through the course recently, and I've been very lucky and I've had the opportunity to have this podcast, so I've heard 98% of the stuff that they covered in there. Like the people I've gotten to talk to, Don't Give Up the Shit podcast, Aaron, various other military individuals that we've brought on and talked to them about their leadership theories and what they've experienced and what they want to see from people who are, you know, in charge of them, managing them, mentoring them, guiding them, you know? And so I went into this class with a lot more knowledge of the topic than I think most people typically do. And I want to say I walked out of that class with quite a bit. Like, I'm not going to say it was useless to me. Like, there was definitely some stuff in there that I think was very, very helpful. But I think the biggest thing, too, was seeing how other people digested that information and how they took it upon themselves to want to enhance their leadership theory. So, very great. The class, it was open discussion. You could talk about the topics in any way, approach it from a different manner. Like, hey, what's your opinion on this? Or what's your opinion on that? Or how do you think that would be implemented? Or can you give me an example? Things like that. And if it wasn't for our facilitators for the class were 2 E8s, and they were phenomenal. They were very much like open to the discussion. They wanted to hear everybody's opinion, and everybody in the class wanted to give their opinion in a respectful manner, of course. Now, pitfalls of the class, it's only 1 week long. So personally, I don't think that's enough time for you to develop. Like, it's enough time for you to understand the material, but it's not nearly enough time for you to actually take that and incorporate that into how you want to be as a leader. You need more practical training as well. Like, you need to have that, like, class teach back that you were talking about, Eric. That just wasn't a thing in this. Like, kind of, but not really, right? Like, there was a thing where we had to talk about our leadership philosophy, and then the class would provide to us feedback on, you know, what they thought the theory, if it was good, if it, you know, problems that they saw with it, so on and so forth. That was cool. But definitely some aspects were like teaching and actually having to like interact with people and then getting feedback about how to do that, I think would have been wonderful. They've gone away from the petty officer indoc, the death by PowerPoint. There was not a single PowerPoint in this course, which I was like, whoa. I was like, the Navy actually removed PowerPoints from a presentation, because the Navy's normal go-to, the military in general, I'm sure, but the normal go-to is always throw more PowerPoints. Like, you guys didn't learn anything from that 4-hour PowerPoint presentation? Give them another 2-hour one. They're going to learn. Like, that's just how it works, you know? Add some more courses on e-learning. You're going to get there. But, yeah, thankfully, then they took away the PowerPoints. Super helpful.
That's good, at least. But, yeah, I think I don't know about the more advanced ones, like E8 and E9, but I'm pretty sure all of our leadership schools are, like, about a month long.
Eric, I want to provide an opportunity here. I know you wanted to highlight some of the obstacles that the Army is still facing and perhaps provide solutions, or maybe we could brainstorm some here on the air.
Yeah, for sure. I think one big issue I think now is the barracks quality of life is really bad. So, you know, we've had some barracks are like as old as World War II or more, or at least the 60s. Like out at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, like there's like nasty ass water. There's mold in the barracks. Heating or AC, depending on the season, isn't working. And like they're just in really shitty conditions. Out at Fort Carson in Colorado, the Chow Hall, I don't know what the deal is. It's like they're not running properly, and like they're having just like vending, not like a vending machine, but like just like quick little grab snacks for guys to grab for chow time.
Huh.
And yeah, so I'm not going. And accountability of personnel was really big during this time. Like at PT, like one guy that was getting out and he couldn't come very much because he divorced his wife and he was the only caretaker of his kids. So like sometimes he'd have to show up for PT and then dip out. But he didn't show up one time, and like I'm calling the shit out of him, and I apologize. I try to explain to him like, hey man, like I know this is really annoying, but we got to make sure like you aren't like missing or something. He's like, oh yeah, I get it. So I was like, cool, don't worry about coming to PT, just come at 9:30. Some leadership is, they're just caught up in their old ways. One of my coworkers on Friday, he was in the Army too. He's talking about he had a first sergeant in E8 that would like take people's school request packets and just shred them up as soon as they walked out of his office and throw them in the trash can. So unfortunately, there's really awful people like that out there still. There's some like the whole going missing thing. I think that's good on the Army to like, okay, soldiers disappeared. Let's not immediately put the blame on them. Let's try and figure this out before we jump to conclusions. The barracks thing, it's really shitty. I think they need to prioritize that. And just like, I know in my brigade footprint, ever since I arrived 6 years ago, they've been tearing down old barracks and putting up new ones. Kitty. But unfortunately, my battalion didn't get that. I think we're still the old, original gross barracks from like the 60s or whatever. So maybe in the next couple of years, that'll finally get fixed, because I think we're almost all new barracks now, in my brigade at least.
Yeah, the barrack situation and that chow hall situation, that's abhorrent. Like, whatever the problem is, like that should be one of the key things that they're like, we need to make sure this is up and running. We got people in need. Like, they can't just be handing you like an what is it, Uncrustables or whatever. And be like,
yeah.
I would take a Lunchable.
essentially
I'd
what
be
they're
happy
doing.
with a Lunchable. But if you hand me an Uncrustable, I will throw that thing so hard into the trash can.
Yeah. And actually our brigade, our chow hall was closed for a couple months at a time, a few times since I was there.
Dang.
And that's frustrating because, normally, it's walking distance from our battalion, lunchtime. Okay, guys, go get lunch. It's fine. Come back at this time. And when I left, it was good to go, I think. But then, of course, the aviation brigade on the other side of the airfield, their chow hall was closed. So
Of course,
they're crowding up our chow hall.
Yep. Might as well, between both of them. So one of them has to be. You can't have two open at the same time. It has to be one at a time. That's it. That's the problem. God forbid we actually like have two places where people can go and eat. It's either that or you go to McDonald's. Make up your mind.
For sure.
So we've gone through quite a bit of your life changing from Navy to Army, blue to green, in case people haven't made that connection still yet. Your life was changed so much between Navy, Army, and where you're at now. During your times, what kind of key lessons do you think you've picked up?
I think I just learned how to just better treat my Joes. I always tried to apologize if I screwed up. Like sometimes I would like come down with bad information and then I'd try to come back later like, hey guys, I'm sorry, but new information's pushed out. We got to do something else.
Ownership and accountability.
Yeah, pretty much. So I always try to make sure I would do that. I remember one of my Joes, same thing. I didn't really like him, but I had to take care of him because he was divorcing a war girl he met like 6 months ago, and he only knew her for like 3 months. Oof. And all those growing pains with that. I'm trying to help him get his divorce started and all that. At one point he was homeless. While we're over summer block leave. And I told him, like, dude, you could have told me, like, we would have figured something out for you. You could have stayed with me for a night, or we could have because his wife like kicked him out and didn't want him to live in there just because she was weird and whatnot. Not really his fault. She was just a weird, crazy girl. But yeah, so like I had to take care of this guy. He kept having car issues and he was always in and out of mental health. So, and like, sometimes I think it was legit, but that's not for me to decide. So I always make sure it's like, okay, go to mental health. I'll let the squad leader know.
Yeah.
We'll deal with this later. So yeah, just try to make sure people get taken care of was my big thing that I took away from that.
Is there any kind of advice that you would offer to somebody who's currently in the Navy and considering transitioning to the Army or getting out?
Just do it.
Which one?
Just go to the Army, give it a try. If you still don't like it, then for sure get out. Absolutely. I'd say give it a try. I think you'll be surprised. Remember Jarl Skoggy talked to me about it briefly, but I think he ended up saying Navy. But yeah, I'd say definitely if you still want to serve in the military and you're in the Navy, yeah, just jump ship. Cool. Unintended. And give it a try. And if you still don't like it, then okay, at least you gave it an honest try. And you'll still be in a better spot, and in my opinion.
I am so glad. So I opened this episode by saying you're one of the kindest men I've met. And that old photo of like Thor and Robert Downey Jr. and whatever cuddling on the couch.
Yeah.
That's always been us.
Yes.
And I'm glad through all of these trials and tribulations, all the times the Navy made you feel less than, all the times you felt judged, all the times that you felt unseen, unheard, helpless, all of these things, you still give a shit about your people. You still recognize their humanity, their needs. You're holding perspective that their problems are the hardest shit they're dealing with right now.
Preach it.
So thank God that you didn't fucking lose it. Thank God that you didn't allow yourself to become callous.
Well, thank you.
If that's all someone took from this episode, what a blessing. So, Eric, thank you for that. Thank you for coming on and sharing that with us. Is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap it?
I guess if people are wondering why I still got out of the Army despite liking it so much, as I still wasn't achieving my goals, and I just wasn't in a good headspace to put my nose to the grinder and actually commit them. So I was like, I think I should just get out. Overall, I don't regret joining the Army. I'm very glad I switched. Meeting people like Aaron and spending time in Sasebo, that's the only thing keeping me from fully regretting not joining the Army first. Is all the amazing people I met in Sasebo.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. And I'm not gonna lie, a couple of your words earlier, I did. Yeah, as a Navy guy, I had no idea what you were talking about with the striker and light infantry and all that stuff. I was like, But
yeah, it's a lot. I think I read somewhere like the Army actually has the most acronyms and jargon.
Navy's got a lot. If the Army's got more, I'm good. I'm just gonna stay over here in my little sinking gray floaty guy. But Eric, I'm gonna stay blue. I'm gonna stay a little blue. But
Don't
Eric,
die.
there's a lot of stuff about you that we haven't really had the opportunity to talk about, and I think it would be best saved for another episode. I like where we are leaving this one off. Your experiences overall between Navy, Army, and ultimately deciding to get out, and the holes that you've noticed in leadership, both through the Navy and through the Army. I think there's a lot of information here for people to kind of chew on. And I really hope we get to talk a little bit more about your gun enthusiasm, jiu-jitsu, and of course, the most important aspect of your life, your cat. Oh, and your wife, sorry. Both of which, your family, the most important thing.
5 cats.
The most important things.
Yes.
But yeah, so again, Eric, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I do think it's time for us to go ahead and wrap it up. Let's let the guests enjoy what we've talked about, and I hope that they're just as excited to hear from you as we are.
Yes, thank you for having me and letting me just word vomit everywhere, and I'll get to do it very often.
Well, thanks to all of you for following along. We appreciate you more than we could ever express. And if you feel called to express some gratitude in return, you can wear our merch. You can go over to etsy.com/Trinidad and go into the Be Your Own Light collection and get yourself a shirt. Rep us.
Hell yeah.
We also have Patreon, where you can support us directly if you want us to try and fix some of these streetlights. That would help quite a lot.
I've never climbed a ladder in my life, but I would definitely do it for the listeners. And on top of that as well, we already mentioned it, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, we are over there. As a friend of mine likes to tell me, we are out here. I think that's how they say it. So what's incredible about all of that lovely stuff is you can share those links directly on any of your social media, through a text message, through an email. through a carrier pigeon if people are still doing that. So feel free to share our links with some of your friends, anybody who's popped into your head and you're like, oh man, I really want so-and-so to hear about this leadership stuff going on in the Army. Like, this would be a great idea to start implementing in the Navy. Things that pop into my head, right? So I'm going to send this episode once it publishes to probably a Master Chief somewhere in the Navy and be like, hey, what do you think about this? And then and then probably get asked, how'd you get this number? But you can also hit us up directly on any of our social media platforms or over on our email, nostreetlightspodcast@gmail.com. Links are going to be in the description below. If you want to collab with us, come on the show, come talk with us. If you want us on your show, and we can come and talk to you, and maybe we can explain to you what No Streetlights is all about and what it means. So, please hit us up. We'd love to hear it.
Friendly reminder, our podcast is for entertainment purposes and cannot be substituted for professional medical advice.
If you need help now, please call 911 or 988 for immediate intervention.
Be good to yourselves and each other.
We love you.
Peace.
How did we do that?